Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. Good Lord, 2024 is almost over. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter will join us in just a minute here. It is 9:09. 8 minutes of Mark and I and Bill telling stories about how our dad disciplined us as opposed to the way things are done now. So we digressed before the show. And when we digress during the show, you can get even more upset. But first, one ad today, one sponsor, and a special one. It is Mando. Mando. It is men's odor control, clinically proven for 72 hours. Because it's football season. It's time for tailgates, touchdowns, and Sunday cookouts with the crew. You know what you're bringing to a tailgate. You got your burgers, your beers, your buns, your chips, your jersey. But are you going to get stressed and sweaty when it's third and long and the game is on the line? That's why you have Mando, whole body deodorant, and it should be a game day essential. Clinically proven 72-hour odor control, perfect for long days at the game or the bar. Safe for the whole body, pits, package, feet, and everywhere in between. Comes in 4 cologne quality scents: Bourbon Leather, Mount Fuji, Pro Sport, and Clover Woods. I'm a bourbon leather guy myself. It smells wonderful. All right. So if you want Mando's starter pack, it is perfect for new customers. It also makes a great last-minute stocking stuffer. Good Lord, Christmas is coming up. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash, deodorant wipes, and you get free shipping. Because you're here at Bucknuts, and like we said, these ads would not come up if the Bucknutters weren't using them. So join your nutters in taking advantage of this stuff. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. The code, not a hard one, Bucknuts at shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Don't let BO keep you on the bench. Smell better naked with Mando. What would it be if we did not have a morning show referencing your nudity? We welcome in 2 disciplinarians, 2 guys who run their household with a iron fist. Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter. How are we doing today, guys? I told the fans we had a 8-minute digression into parental and our dad's taking a little out of our butt, and you can't do that now. And so we're not going to have any digressions during the show. And then I chuckled because, of course, we're going to have digressions. This is our show. But let's start with this. It was a very productive weekend in the shoe. Ohio State welcomed in Purdue, threw up a 45-0 shutout, got to show off their wares to a bunch of possible future Buckeyes. And Bill, we're going to start with your red carpet diary from the weekend. Kind of an interesting cross-section of dudes, some real big-time youngsters, a couple offensive linemen I think everybody wants to hear about. Offensive line has become a super key part of recruiting. Give me your vibes on the offensive linemen that were here this past weekend. I know I read an article about a kid from Sarasota who looked really good when I got a picture of him.
Yeah, that would be Deron Parks from Sarasota now, but he is originally from West Virginia, which makes it more interesting because obviously West Virginia is pretty close to Ohio State. In fact, Hurricane West Virginia, I believe, is good morning. Hurricane West Virginia, I believe, is really close to Ohio. So he is from West Virginia, lives in Sarasota now. Good morning, Deetra. And has for quite some time had a scholarship offer from the Buckeyes. The interesting thing was he came up to West Virginia for the weekend and was in West Virginia, and his ride didn't work out for him to get from West Virginia to Ohio State on Saturday. So he didn't make it to the game itself. But he did rearrange things, his ride and all, and did make it to Ohio State and spent the day at Ohio State on Sunday and was very impressed. That is visit number 4 for Deron Parks to Ohio State. So he's very interested in the Buckeyes. And likes Ohio State a lot. If Ohio State goes all in on him, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ended up being a Buckeye down the road. But for now, he's uncommitted. He's not even dropped his top schools list, actually, and plans to do that probably in the coming weeks. And Ohio State will definitely be on that list. He's would like to get back to Ohio State for the Michigan game, but that probably won't work out because of his own game schedule. The other offensive line I think is of interest, and Deron Parks is a 2026 offensive lineman, and so is a guy that I know Mark Porter has talked quite a bit about. That'd be Landry Breed. And I said something along the lines that he's an offensive lineman on the rise. In my article on Bucknuts this morning, I think as Mark has talked about, he has seen him recently and has been more and more impressed with him, and more schools are showing interest in Landry. Did not get an offer from Ohio State this weekend, but certainly he's on their radar screen. So those are the two offensive linemen in particular to point out. Deron Parks, as I mentioned, has an offer already from the Buckeyes, and I think there were at least 8 players that arrived at Ohio State this weekend having already been offered a scholarship by Ohio State. So that's a pretty darn good number for a game like Purdue. Mm-hmm. And then another player got an offer. Elijah Kimball, a running back from the East Coast, was offered a scholarship by Ohio State this weekend, and he was pretty excited about that offer. So all in all, it was a pretty impressive recruiting weekend for Ohio State, considering that it was just Purdue that they were playing.
Mark, your thoughts on Breed? A little bit about his background, what you've known about him to this point. Obviously, even when you see a picture of him, he looks like a youngster.
Yeah, youngster. I know some people up in Mentor very well, and they like his character. They think he's a great kid. They say he's a quiet kid, which I usually like that. Passes the eyeball test. What I like about him is how they use him on zone blocking and pulling, and he's successful at it. When we watch Ohio State offensive linemen on their highlight tape, they better be able to zone block, and he does that. For Ohio, being an Ohio guy, he's going to be one of the top-rated linemen in Ohio. He'll be at the Ohio State camp this summer, I would have to assume. But he's a guy that's probably going to be on the short list. I think this offensive line class, once we get done with it, may be a little better than we think, because we've had some guys pegged as the top 4. Guys like Landry and a few other guys I've kept an eye on, we're going to make a name for themselves by the time this is all over. And even if it's not at Ohio State, there's some very quality players at the upper end of the tier in the offensive line category.
Is he – when you look at him and think long-term, position, size, you have a vibe on that?
Yeah, like he doesn't have the extremely long arms like Will Greer or Sam Greer. Sam Greer. I do it every time.
That's your picadillo now. It's Ron Wilson for you. Go ahead.
You put it in my brain. But Sam Greer is your prototype for the left tackle with the 747-like wingspan. Landry doesn't have that type of wingspan, but it's not like he's a short, sawed-off 6'3" guy. He's going to be 6'4", pushing that 6'5". He looks big in person. And I think your question, and this is always, is he a left tackle? Is he going to guard? I think he's got the feet. That's why I mentioned the zone blocking and pulling. I think he's got the feet where he's going to start off at left tackle, and then maybe if they have to move him. But he's a pretty athletic kid, and he's got a mean streak, and that's what always seems to catch my eye, and that seems to be the trait that you're going to need to fight through everything you're going to need to fight through to get on the field one day.
Recruiting question, Bill, from Camp St. Prix, one of our best. I heard Devin Carter, wide receiver from the class of 26 from Georgia, is heavily leaning towards Buckeye Nation. As we are doing this, Bill, and the names, we kind of build up this new group of names for the 2026 cycle. Maybe give everybody an understanding of who he is, what you know about him, and then bleed that into the Ohio State angle.
So he's a 2026 wide receiver from Georgia. He's made I don't know if I would say go quite as far as to say he's heavily leaning towards Ohio State, but he sure likes Ohio State. I've talked to him multiple times about Ohio State, and he is very, very impressed with Ohio State. I think absolutely Ohio State is one of the top schools on his list for sure.
Ohio State wide receiver recruiting really is almost in the select, not recruit level right now. I have a feeling if Brian Hartline goes all in on you, you're a Buckeye. And rightfully so. Apparently, we know what to do with freshman receivers here. A little birdie told me that. Oh, a little inside birdie told me I like that. That's good stuff. All right, Bill, question. Does Jared Curtis visit next week? This is kind of an ambush question. Jared Curtis, of course, a man-sized young quarterback. Good Lord. This is a borderline prototype, almost maybe a little Josh Allen-ish, if I could hop on that limb. I believe, Bill, he was committed to the University of Georgia and has decommitted, as many top quarterbacks are wont to do, we're noticing, Raiola. What is the latest on Jared Curtis? Is Ohio State really in the mix? I imagine he is getting interest from every corner of the country.
Yeah, he actually visited Oregon this past weekend, and
Great.
it went well.
Great.
When you look at where Ohio State is, and let's clarify weekends, because they said visiting next weekend. Hopefully, they're referring to next weekend as a week and a half from now, because obviously Ohio State plays Northwestern this weekend. That game is on the road, so he won't be visiting Ohio State this coming next weekend. But I think they're referring to the weekend after that, the Indiana game. He is planning to visit Ohio State that weekend. Ohio State is one of about 6 schools, half a dozen schools, that he is seriously considering. I think Oregon really impressed him this past weekend. In fact, I know they did. But Ohio State gets their shot when he visits for the Indiana game. That is his plan. I think it's not going to be easy necessarily getting a great 2026 quarterback, because they're going to sign a pretty great 2025 quarterback here in a matter of weeks in TreVeyon St. Clair. So you're going to have the right guy. At one point, I didn't think they would even take a 2026 quarterback, just because their quarterback room is in such great shape now. Mm-hmm. A lot will depend on who they might get. Would they turn down a Jared Curtis? I can't imagine that they would. But they do have a great quarterback room coming back. But we don't know right now how many of those guys are staying for sure and how many of them are going to transfer, if any. So we'll see.
I don't want to speak out of turn here, but we all know that the current state of college football, I'm not saying there's a salary cap, but there's a financial angle to this. And do we really want to spend all that money on another quarterback in the class when that money could be spent elsewhere, when you've got guys in the mix like TreVeyon St. Clair, who'll be a youngster at that point? Get me 2 more offensive or defensive linemen, but that's just me.
Dan, what you brought up there reminds me of Clemson. That's been, and again, I don't want to necessarily compare Clemson to Ohio State, but one of the things Clemson has done in recent years is they haven't taken a great quarterback every year. They've wanted to try to take a great quarterback every other year. And it kind of goes back what you're referring to, Dan, stacking great players on top of great players, as Ohio State has kind of done at wide receiver. And then some of them don't like the fact that they got to wait in line and they transfer out. And so Ohio State this year, I think very smartly so, is set to sign a couple developmental type guys that they'll wait their turn and could be great by the time they develop.
The most obvious of this being the Chris Henry year gap in between Chris Henry and Jeremiah Smith. The idea that we at some point in time we're going to have Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry on the field at the same time, that'll be after I think Carnell Tate gets picked in the first round, but I digress. There I go again. All right. Mika, what would the show be without Mika? Not as informative. William, and you guys can all chime in on these guys. These are 4 of the guys we've talked about a ton. Jameer Brown, Wayne, Elbert Hill from Akron Hoban, Sincere Johnson, Glenville. Victor Singleton, you're going to have to help me out. I choked at the end there. Bill, take any of those guys you want to discuss, and Mark, take the others.
Well, Mark, I saw you were ready to speak on, I think, Victor, so I'll let you go first.
Go ahead, Mark. Mark.
Try to keep my background
That's all right.
noise to a minimum there.
I like that.
The question Dan had is, where was Victor Singleton from? I was answering Toledo Central Catholic.
Thank you, sir.
Have not seen them yet, but I expect they're on a collision course for Ursuline, and I'm kind of waiting for that game. I'm hoping everything aligns the way I think it is here, because that could be one of the best games in the state when it comes to Division III. But since Victor's freshman year, he has been off the charts, one of the most fluid athletic corners in the state. Update would be Bill's territory, where he's at with Ohio State. The other guys you mentioned there are all top-notch guys. When I saw Elbert Hill a few weeks ago with Hoban, he looks faster on the field than he did in the offseason, running, the sprints and stuff like that. I'm saying his game speed is actually electric. And who were some of the other? Oh, Jameer Brown. Yeah, I came out of Jameer Brown, and I made the crazy statement, Dan, that
I remember
Jameer Brown I liked better than who?
Chris
Henry. Yeah, and that may have shaken the podcast.
I would take both.
I'm good with that. But, I don't make very many calls, but, boy, Jameer Brown is electric, and I really had a man crush on him as a football scout. That's the type of receiver that I would get as many as possible.
Olympic speed.
I'm telling you, and it shows
Literally.
up. And, when I was ISOing him, and when he was just doing a normal play, he played hard and everything. But there was a couple of times when he knew he was getting the ball or the route was called and he was the number one receiver. And I said it before, it felt like the turf was tearing out from underneath his feet. That's how hard he was digging on those plays to get open and run by people. I mean, when he wants to go, he goes. So, yeah, that's a great list of players. I think Bill, I'm showing you how much I think these guys are passing the bar or above the bar. Bill would tell you more where they stand with Ohio State.
Let's get all four. Go ahead, Bill. I'm not even kidding. Go ahead.
Well,
did they get all four? Sorry.
Let me see. That went off there so quick. I'm not sure I have it. We've got
you've got
Jameer Brown. We've got Victor Singleton. Thank you, Dan. We got Elbert Hill and Sincere Johnson.
I didn't talk about Sincere, but he's the one who lost the weight, 10, 15 pounds, and he added the word juice to his repertoire, where he gets around the field a lot quicker. And when he was the inside linebacker, defensive end tweener a year ago, he solidified his spot at linebacker now.
Four really good programs there too, by the way. High school programs. I mean, these guys will hit the ground running in terms of preparation. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
I would not bet against Ohio State with any of those players right now. I don't necessarily see any of them getting on the verge of announcing a decision. Although, again, I never like to say never in recruiting, because you never know. Things change daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes minutely when it comes to recruiting. But I would not bet against Ohio State with any of those guys. And actually, I know at least one of them. I've got Elbert Hill crystal ball to Ohio State. I think I might have Victor Singleton crystal ball as well. With Jameer, I do know he likes Penn State a lot too. In fact, the night I saw him playing, if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure this is correct, he was wearing a set of Penn State gloves that night. Now, again, that's not by any means. That's not.
Ironically, Penn State invited him to come and start the next day, but he said that he was busy. He had stuff to do. Go ahead.
Yeah, that night he had quite the evening. Two long touchdown passes, receptions. One with an incredible juke move that after he caught the ball, he put on a guy, a would-be, and I say would-be tackler because I don't think the guy even touched him. But, again, I tend to like where Ohio State stands right now with all four of those guys. And how many Glenville guys have we seen that Ohio State really wants and pushes for have gone elsewhere?
You could probably say the same thing for Wayne, Bill.
Yeah.
If they really pushed. I mean, I know tight end went to Bama a little bit ago and stuff, but Wayne is an Ohio State school. Look who did the intro to the Ohio State game this past weekend on television. Thought that was Braxton Miller. Fine Wayne grad. Boy, I heard a rumor about a Wayne grad this morning I don't want to repeat. It may have come from north, and it may have something to do with the Cowboys, and I'm not going to say anything more about it because tears are not something you people want to see this early in the morning. Bill, Tom Pauly has a question. How big of a chance do we have of flipping Turbo Rogers to the Buckeyes? Turbo Rogers is a running back from Alabama. He attended Pike Road, which is where Quinshon Judkins went. He's now at Carver High School. There may have even been a stop in between there. He is a slot. He is a littler, explosive, hence the nickname Turbo. But he actually would bring something to the offense that I don't think they have right now, which is why I'm kind of interested in him. He is, however, committed to his home state, Alabama. William, you have followed this intently. Carlos Lachlan has really done a good job keeping Turbo in the mix. Bring us up to speed if you could.
Yeah, I mean, he's only been recruiting Turbo since Turbo was in 8th grade. And they're both from Montgomery. And as you mentioned, Dan, the Quinshon Judkins angle. There's a lot of reasons Turbo could flip to Ohio State. Another one, Chip Kelly and his offense. They have been recruiting Turbo as a guy that could be great out of the slot. He could line up in the backfield. I talked to Turbo after his Ohio State official visit. Talked to him on Sunday, and it went extremely well. But I always like to let the visit wear off a little bit. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It never wears off. I hope to have some new information. I like to let things wear off a little bit from what he told me on Sunday. At that point, he said, let me have a couple days to figure things out. So that's what I'm doing, giving a little space, and hopefully I'll have a little more information today or at the latest tomorrow. Alabama's trying to get him back there. He has not used that official visit yet to Alabama. Ohio State was actually his first official visit. They want to get him in for an official visit. They'd like to get him on campus this coming weekend. As of when I talked to him on Sunday, he did not know what he was going to do. Georgia is still they're pushing for him too. Right now, he remains committed to Alabama, but I would not bet against Ohio State. But again, I want to give things, as he is, giving things a little time to settle in and see what he goes with. But it was a great visit for him, no question.
I said this to Dave yesterday on the Monday show. The Ohio State running back situation, I think, is going to bear fruit in that they've shown two really, really high-profile, really good running backs can thrive in the same system, and they'll be opening up. So whether that's Turbo Rogers hopping in the crew along with other recruits, or it's Ohio State being able to go in the transfer portal and handpick the next Judkins, I think they're in real good shape at running back. Real good shape. All right, we're going to ask two more recruiting questions and then finish this thing off with some Buckeye in the sky. Bill, we'd be remiss if we did not. Actually, let's do this one. I got three in mind. So, Mika, you're back up. Quickly, Bill. Jordan Thomas, Jordan Woods, and Jermaine Kinsler. Just do that one quickly if you could.
Yeah, I talked to both Kinsler and Jordan Thomas, visited Ohio State this past weekend. I talked to both of them. Things went great. Both are highly interested in Ohio State. But and by the way, Kinsler is a defensive end, about 6'7", 260. Jordan Thomas is a cornerback, a long cornerback. They're both 2026 kids. But
they're
neither
teammates.
one of – say it again?
Are they not teammates at Bergen Catholic?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, they're
That's
teammates.
key now.
And they are teammates of Quincy Porter. The interesting thing was –
And Bergen, hold on a sec, Bill, to interrupt you. Bergen Catholic, for those who don't know, North Jersey, that is big-time football. It used to be a Penn State recruiting ground. I actually played high school football with a transfer from Bergen Catholic. It's legit. If it's not, it's a top 5 program, definitely. And like you said, the idea they already have Porter coming from there doesn't hurt.
And interestingly enough, while those two were visiting Ohio State, the Buckeye commitment, Quincy Porter, was visiting Penn State.
I was going to ask you about that. There's a question about that. You might as well address that as well, Bill.
Yeah, Penn State would love to flip him. I've seen so far no signs that Quincy Porter is going to flip. I still like Ohio State to hang on there and get his signature. Quincy Porter likes Ohio State a lot.
That's still troubling, though, Bill, because they do not have any receivers at Penn State.
Yep.
Well, Quincy Porter this is just a fact. Quincy Porter will get on the field faster at Penn State than he will at Ohio State. So Ohio State, in this case, has got to sell that long term. Turn on the red zone. I would say that. Turn on the red zone on Sunday and start your stopwatch. And every time you hear a Buckeye wide receiver's name mentioned, stop it. You ain't going more than 3 or 4 minutes. So go ahead, Bill. I digressed again. Look at me.
Well, I never like to say never in recruiting, but again, this is right now. I still like Ohio State to keep Quincy Porter in the class. In the case of Kinsler and Jordan Thomas, they're both going to get back to Ohio State, and don't expect anything. They both indicated to me they're not close to making a decision. So I think winter at best for decisions from them, probably spring or later. So, Ohio State, though, is very, very highly in the running for both of them.
And they both really look the part, by the way.
Yep.
They're
now,
prototypes.
Was there anybody else on that question? I can't remember now.
I think we're good. No, okay. Jordan Woods, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, Jordan Woods. Okay, Jordan Woods is going to make an official visit for the Indiana game. I like Ohio State in that one. He is still committed to Cincinnati, but as things stand right now, pre-official visit, I like Ohio State as a very reasonable shot to flip him to Ohio State.
All right. Last recruiting question before we do Eye in the Sky, and this one is low-hanging fruit. We talked about it a while. Big Thanos, also known as Jakeem Stewart, the New Orleans defensive tackle who transferred this year, is not even playing football. He's not playing football this year. He's moved up a class, and everybody still wants him. That lets you know how good he is. He is a monster, hence the Thanos nickname. And there was some real buzz that Oregon and Ohio State popped out in front. Your guy, William Kurelic, thinks LSU is always going to be strong here. Louisiana natives, it's very difficult to get them out of the South. Bill, your vibe.
Well, he made his official visit to LSU, and they lost. So that's not a great thing for LSU, but he is still going to visit Ohio State. Obviously, he's got the official visit for the Michigan game. He's made his official visit to Oregon. That left a really good impression on him. With Jakeem, like all of the big-time recruits, so much is dependent on NIL. When you're going against LSU, the home state school, and Oregon, the Nike school, not always easy to win NIL wars if it totally comes down to that. I don't think it'll totally come down to that. That doesn't necessarily always come down to the bottom dollar being the NIL, but it's going to be a big factor there. I just don't think I would not go out on a limb right now and crystal ball him to any one of those 3 schools right now.
Yeah, with those guys at the very, very top, it reminds me of the Jay-Z line, I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man. All right, Mark. Buckeye in the Sky. This has been getting better and better as we do it. The Penn State game required 2 parts. And as Mark said in his recent Buckeye in the Sky, they're going to show you some clips here for Purdue. The Purdue game is your classic one-parter. 45-0, handled business, no turnovers. If Ohio State does not turn it over, they will not lose. Okay, Mark, this is not the beginning. This is kind of towards the middle or end, but bring us up to speed.
Yeah, I think we're going to do 3 or 4 plays here.
Great.
Starting off with very basic man-to-man coverage. You see who everybody's covering. Cover 1 would mean the safety was going to draw it back to the middle, but down here near the goal line, you really don't need to be over the top anymore. So he kind of hangs out in this middle area. You could call him a spy or robber or whatever, but that's the change up with the cover 1 there. We'll play this video now. Whenever it's man-to-man and you have a guy like Jeremiah Smith, it's real hard not to give it to him or go to his matchup. With both middle linebackers blitzing there, he's just running a drag or what I would call a crosser. And that's basically a vertical route where you're just running fast. So instead of running deep down the field, you just cross the field and look at the separation of the poor guy trying to just run with him. And he's already taken an angle. Like in that route, you can see that DB. If I go back there, say to himself, okay, this kid's going to catch the ball. he was over the top for and still couldn't get him. That's how much speed Jeremiah Smith has.
Mark, question for you.
Yes,
when
sir.
I watched that play run, I thought to myself, why don't we run that at our own 15-yard line and watch him take off down the sideline?
You might not get that man-to-man coverage
because
in the middle of the field. And that's the cat and mouse game. Once you get down by the goal line, your DBs, what do they got to worry about? A 20-yard fade? It's not that real over the top there. So it could be just a coverage thing. But you're right. And Ohio State loves the crossers. They love deep crossers. They love shallow crossers. They love themselves some crossers. This play's fun to break down. May take a couple minutes. Let's look at the slot receiver here. He's not on, or he's on the line, and so is this guy, which means he's not eligible. Okay, he's covered up. But look at this. There's a corner standing right across from him because breaking a huddle, things are happening fast. He's not realizing that. The only thing this guy can do is block. Over here, the tackle's eligible. And when you start to motion this guy across, and we'll play this now, they're going to motion unbalanced at the last second here. This is the type of stuff you put on film, and the other team has to sit there and deal with it and think of all the different things you can do. Last week, we saw them run option to the short side. We saw them run quarterback sweep to the short side. But essentially, once you get numbers to this short side, when there's only 3 defenders here to block, boy, there's a lot of plays you can run when you're pulling guards over there. And the Chip Kelly smoke and mirrors, everybody runs counter trade. But here's your jet sweep with some cute behind the back fake where the quarterback spins around in a circle and, kind of slides it to the guy underneath like an old scissors play or wing T play. Chip Kelly has seen a lot of football there, and he brings it all every week. And the point of that run we need to point out is TreVeyon Henderson's running like a ton of bricks. Like, he is absolutely running like a 230-pound guy when he gets ahead of steam now. Next play.
Hold on a second. I want to give credit where credit is due because I've given him shots. Tegra blocked the correct guy on that play, and it worked. I even heard, I don't know if you guys heard me say that on here, that Tegra was just blocking the wrong guy. Brian Day essentially said that in the press conference after the Nebraska game. It wasn't a talent issue. It was an assignment issue. Once Tegra blocks the right guy, it usually tends to go well. If you watch that again, he clears the outside guy right out.
And I'm a big fan of the gap scheme. And this was a play we ran with our young guys this year a ton, this gap with the kick out and the other guy leading up through here. It is really a simple scheme, and I don't think it's used enough in college football. I think there's a lot more zone than you see the gap kick out schemes there. But, great job by the
guard and tackle nailed it.
Yeah, that's a great looking hole
and
there.
They're pulling.
Yeah. This is just individual effort. JT Tumaloa at defensive end. He's been getting upfield and beating these tackles to their outside shoulder. This is just a lucky poke. Sticks a hand in there and happens to poke it right on the ball. You wish you could do that every time you tackled somebody. And then, like I say, Johnny on the spot. Jack Sawyer's there to pick it up and run it in. Boy, you love plays like that. They're like just such momentum changers. And it's like you work so hard to get points on the board, but when you get points on the board on a freebie like that, you're like, boy, this football is really easy and really fun. With this paused and pre-snap, you're going to see the running back shift out to receiver here, and this tight end kind of shift in to be maybe the pass protector. So that's a little wrinkle there when you line up the trips, and then all of a sudden they're shifting to, 2x2, and it kind of gives you a little different look.
But the guy goes. This is important, Mark. That's TreVeyon Henderson lining up at wide receiver. That is not common.
It's very common in the NFL.
Not here.
Yeah, not here. It's a very common thing to do, though, especially in 5 wides. And the reason people do it is when you walk your guy out here, this is usually a linebacker that has to walk out. Someone from this has to detach. Now, bells and whistles should be going off in everybody's head if you have TreVeyon Henderson man-to-man versus, a linebacker. If he's playing off, you're going to get hitches and slants all day. And a lot of times with cover one man over the top, that safety should be cheating to that side for immediate help. That is not a race. Now, the most common thing to do is just race. Linebacker versus TreVeyon. Let's see who's faster, and we'll end with a touchdown here. They do a little bit of a fancier thing with a slant and go where they kind of give the pump fake to really set this up. But I don't even know if you need slant and go. I think you just run by his outside shoulder and put a ball out there. Now, on the boards, people are like, oh, you don't like to use stuff like this because then you can't use it in a couple of weeks. Trust me, if next week they come out in this formation and a safety or corner walks out with TreVeyon Henderson because they made the adjustment, well, that's going to leave you short somewhere else. And you're not getting
line 4.
Yeah. So, you can play this cat and mouse game, and, Chip's seen this stuff before. I mean, this is, I know this is not deep in his bag. He has the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. And you can keep teaching your kids what you've seen on tape in the past. And I think all it's going to do is set you up for the next thing Chip wants. Good, go adjust to this. I've already adjusted to your adjustment.
Have you ever seen the movie The Princess Bride? Do you know
I wouldn't admit it if I did.
Oh, come on. That's a great movie. You should be watching that with your kids. But there's a scene where they play chess and the guy's like, or drinks poison. He's like, I'm doing that because you thought I wouldn't do that. And you knew I wouldn't do this, but then you thought I was going to do that. So of course you're not doing this. Drinks it, dies right there. Chip's the guy giving the poison. You don't know. He's got you on your heels, and he's got more talent than he's ever had relative to the competition. Keep that in mind. That's a fact. As much as Chip Kelly has done in his career, he's never been in a place where he's got the best receiving core. And like Dave said this on Monday, Carnell Tate. Where does Carnell Tate rank among third wide receivers in college football? Where does Carnell Tate rate among third wide receivers in the NFC East? Okay? Trust me on this. Very highly. And then you've got the 2 running backs. So Chip's in his bag. All right.
That reminds me, Mark. Remember you and I standing there watching Carnell Tate at Ohio State's camp when he had the red Ohio State T-shirt on, and you and I commenting, this guy looks like he's an Ohio State veteran wide receiver right now. And he was a senior in high school, going into his senior year, actually.
It's great. We talked about this yesterday with Dave. I'm rehashing a lot of stuff, but one of the reasons it's great to be Ohio State is, for example, everyone got on them for not playing Carson Hinsman. But you can make mistakes at Ohio State and still have a guy like Carson Hinsman on the bench and throw him in there. That depth of talent allows you a larger margin for error. That's the beauty of it. I think play calling has a lot to do with confidence and who's around you. I think the leash on Chip Kelly is forever. Where some offensive coordinators, they get a little tight and they're scared to do all these trick things because people say, oh, you're crazy. I think Chip is so far outside the box that he could call whatever he wants. And if it goes galactically, stupidly wrong, so what? So what? It's just one of 60 plays in a game. I may call 3 galactically stupid plays during this game, but I'm going to call 3 other ones that everyone's going to sit there and go, boy, that guy is otherworldly genius, 2 steps ahead of everybody. So there may be a little give and take with that. But if you watch a 65-play game, a lot of people are failing running ISO, Dave, and sweep, getting drilled in the backfield. And I think there's a boringness to that. Like, I'm so sick of getting blown up on ISO power sweep. Let's get blown up on a trick double reverse pass bubble screen with a counter fake. And, okay, it didn't work, but at least we tried something, The Brandon Ennis touchdown, to me, at Penn State is the number one version of this, because if you watch him celebrating in the end zone, he was celebrating with Jaden Ballard and Bryson Rogers. They don't think you're going to pass when you have that group in there. That's the layering of Chip. Not Chip's first rodeo. Not to mention, he has total support from the head coach, and he is financially independent, which are the 2 things that would make a younger offensive coordinator maybe not sack up when he needed to. Chip can go live on any Caribbean island he wants for the rest of his life and never lift a finger. He's here by choice. So let's be thankful that he's here.
I think that is so important with play calling, just the confidence. And I think,
freedom.
Yeah, much like Belichick in his heyday with Brady, they would be calling plays, like you said, with 3 backup receivers in, 2 backup tight ends, and work the backside tight end matchups because they were great matchups. And they were doing things that other offensive coordinators just didn't have the nuts to try to do. But you guys were playing chess or 3D chess when everybody else was just getting their checkerboard out. So
a lot of guys on the
really
roster, a lot of guys who've had a lot of success. Good to keep a lot of people involved thinking they're going to get the ball. How many times you've been to by the time every single Pee Wee team until they're age 13, every lineman, you ask them what they want to play, they'll tell you tight end because they think, yeah, I'm going to block, but I'm going to get those few catches. G. Scott's gotten a couple. Everybody eats. Kind of like this show. Everybody eats. The Dean eats. Hard weekend of grandparenting. He's back. Feeling better. Mark had another great weekend for us. So playoff football coming. We will preview a lot of that on Thursday. And we will even tell you what's going to go on at Wrigley Field. Boy, if there's ever been a game people are looking past, it is this one to that. And we appreciate these guys stopping by. Have a good one, Bucknutters.